I gifted my dad $2.00 for his birthday, but he told me money doesn't buy respect. My mom agreed, so I tore up the check and stopped paying their bills. I've always admired my dad. Growing up, he was my hero. Omar, my father, worked in a factory and came home each night with calloused hands, exhausted from hours of labor. But despite the fatigue, he always found a way to bring me something, whether it was a cheap toy car, a worn-out ball, or a handful of candies. To me, those things weren't just trinkets. They were gifts from my hero, the man who worked tirelessly to provide for our family. I can still remember the way he'd ruffle my hair and call me his champion. Those moments made me feel like the luckiest kid in the world. My mom, Marcel, was always in the kitchen, making the best meals she could with what little we had, while my younger brother, Juan, played around, often causing chaos with whatever he could get his hands on. We didn't have much, but it felt like we had everything. That was my world, and I loved it. It was simple, it was ours, and it was enough. That is, until I turned 22, everything changed for me then. I discovered a way to make money online. What started as a hobby, posting videos on how to fix phones or edit photos, turned into something much bigger. One of my videos went viral, and before I knew it, brands were paying me to promote their products. Within a year, I was earning more money than my dad ever had, working long shifts in that factory. At first, it was a thrill. I was helping my family. I paid for the bills, the rent, even bought a new TV for the living room. I wanted to show them that I could give back, that I was no longer the kid with the cheap toys, but someone who could make a difference. But then the cracks started showing. It wasn't long before I noticed a change in my dad. At first, it seemed like playful banter. He would joke, calling me the millionaire of the house, saying things like, "Don't forget us poor ones." But his smile never quite reached his eyes. The laughter wasn't as genuine as before. It was envy. I could see it. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't ignore it. Here I was, working hard, achieving success. And yet my dad, who had spent his entire life working for a small salary, couldn't hide the jealousy that was building inside him. I didn't want my relationship with him to be affected by money, so I kept helping, paying the bills, covering the utilities, and making sure that Juan had his internet to play games. I didn't expect gratitude, but I certainly didn't expect the coldness, the way he turned his back on me. Then came his birthday. I had planned it for weeks. I wanted to give him something special, something big. I thought about giving him $2.00. It wasn't just money. It was my way of saying thank you, of showing him that I had made it, and that now I could take care of him. No more working in the factory. No more exhaustion. I wanted him to relax, to enjoy the rewards of a life well lived. The day came. It was a Saturday. My mom, as usual, had prepared a big meal, roasted chicken, and cheap balloons were taped to the walls. Juan was lounging on the couch, glued to his phone, while my dad sat in his armchair with a beer in hand. As usual, the house felt familiar, yet something was off. I couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would be different. After the cake, I stood up. My heart was racing. I could already see it in my mind, my dad's face lighting up when he saw the check. It wasn't just money. It was everything I wanted to give him, the gift of a life free from struggle. I pulled the envelope from my pocket, took a deep breath, and handed it to him. "Dad, this is for you," I said, trying to stay calm. "Happy birthday." He raised an eyebrow, took the envelope, and opened it slowly. My heart was pounding in my chest, but all I saw was silence. He didn't smile, didn't say anything. It was like the air had thickened in the room. "What is this?" he asked, his voice cool, almost dismissive. "It's a gift, Dad. $2,000. You can use it however you want. Maybe it's time to leave the factory," I said, hoping he would understand. He let out a dry laugh. It wasn't a laugh of amusement, but a laugh of disbelief, disdain. "Money. This is what you give me." He spat, throwing the check onto the table like it was nothing. "Money doesn't buy respect. Mediocre," he added, his words cutting deep. I froze. I couldn't believe it. My dad, the man who had always been my hero, was looking at me with contempt. His words felt like a slap in the face, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, hoping this was a joke. that he'd start laughing and say it was all part of a prank. But his eyes were filled with something I had never seen before: disgust. My mom, who had been standing there silently, crossed her arms and nodded. It's true, Wilson. Money isn't everything. You should know that. And then Juan, my younger brother, who rarely said much, piped up. Yeah, brother, what a bad gift. You don't even know Dad at all. The word stung more than I expected. I had thought that maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment I'd been waiting for. But instead, it felt like my heart was being torn in two. But then came the worst part. Juan, who had hardly ever appreciated anything, got up and handed my dad his gift. It was a cheap keychain with a toy car attached, something he probably bought for a couple of pesos at a convenience store. My dad grabbed it with both hands, a broad smile spreading across his face. Thank you, son, he said. You really know how to give gifts, unlike others. That was the final blow. My own brother, the one who had never helped out, who rarely cared about anything, was being praised, while I stood there, feeling invisible. I grabbed the check, torn in half, and walked out of the house without saying a word. The door slammed behind me as the cold night air hit me in the face. But it didn't bring any relief. I was shaking. I couldn't stop the tears from coming, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. I had tried. I had given everything, and all I had gotten in return was disdain. I was done. The days that followed were a strange mix of relief and hurt. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't bound by the weight of their expectations or the constant feeling of being taken for granted. I had spent so much time trying to buy their love, trying to prove that I wasn't just some show-off with too much money, and yet nothing had changed. My phone was silent for the first few days, and I honestly felt like I was finally free. No more chasing approval, no more making excuses for my family's coldness. For the first time in a long while, I felt in control of my own life. I was focused on my work, growing my online brand, and continuing to make money in ways I could never have imagined growing up. I was succeeding, and it felt good. But there was also an emptiness that came with this success. Despite everything that had happened, I missed my family. I missed the way things used to be when I was just their little boy, before money became a problem. I wondered if I had done the right thing by walking away. If maybe I should have tried harder, been more patient, or just ignored the insults. But then I would remember their words, their eyes, and the way they treated me. No matter how I looked at it, nothing would have been enough. They never saw me for who I was. They saw me as a tool for their convenience. Then the calls came. It started with a message from my mom. It was short and to the point. Wilson, we need to talk. Things are tough here. Part of me wanted to just ignore it, but another part of me softened. I hadn't heard from her in so long, and I missed her even after everything. Maybe she was finally ready to apologize, or at least acknowledge the pain she had caused. So I replied with a simple okay. I drove back to the house that day with a pit in my stomach. It felt weird being there again. The house that used to feel like home now felt like a place full of ghosts. When my mom opened the door, I noticed her eyes were puffy, her hair messy, like she hadn't slept well in days. She didn't say much, just gestured for me to come inside. The living room looked the same, except the birthday banner for my dad was gone. The TV I had bought for them was still there, though, quietly humming in the background. Juan was lounging on the couch, his eyes glued to his phone. My dad, as always, sat in his armchair with a beer in hand. The silence was suffocating. No one greeted me warmly, no apologies, just an uncomfortable stillness. I sat down, my eyes scanning my family. My mom's arms were crossed tightly, her gaze hard and judgmental. Juan didn't even look up from his phone. And my dad, well, he barely even acknowledged me. It felt like I was a stranger in my own home. Then my mom spoke. Wilson, this can't go on. Her voice wasn't soft or apologetic. It was scolding cold. We had our power cut for 3 days last week. The internet's been out for weeks. What do you expect us to do because of your pride? I was stunned. She was blaming me. I stayed silent, trying to process the fact that she was seriously blaming me for this. I hadn't done anything but try to help. But here I was, the villain. Before I could respond, my dad chimed in, laughing like it was some joke. Of course, the great Wilson punishing us because we didn't applaud your little gift. He mocked, his eyes filled with disdain. What did you expect? That I would thank you for shoving your money in our face. The words stung like acid. I tried to keep calm, but my voice trembled. It wasn't to shove anything in your face. Dad, I wanted to help you. I wanted to give you something good, for once. I wanted to support you. My mom shook her head. Support isn't throwing money at us and then taking it away just because you didn't like how we reacted. That's being selfish. Wilson. Juan finally looked up, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Besides, if it's nothing for you, why don't you just keep paying the bills? I mean, it means nothing to you, right? You prefer to see us struggling. I felt like I was suffocating. I was sitting in front of my own family, my own blood, and they were tearing me apart for trying to help. I had been nothing but generous to them, and all I got in return was judgment and disdain. It was like they were deliberately pushing me away, treating me like I didn't matter. I stood up, my fists clenched. If you hate my money so much, then you don't need it, I said, staring directly at my dad. I'm tired of being treated like garbage for trying to help you. My dad stood up too, his face hard with anger. For a second, I thought he might come closer, but instead, he just pointed to the door. Then leave. We don't need a show-off like you here. I always knew you'd think you're better than us. The words hit like a ton of bricks. My heart felt like it was being ripped in half. But I didn't let myself break. I turned, walking toward the door. As I slammed it behind me, I heard my dad's voice shout after me. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I walked to my car, the tears burning behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not this time. I promised myself I was done. I was done trying to fix something that had never been right. I had tried to help them, to give them what they needed, and all I had gotten in return was scorn. It was over. The next few days after I left the house felt like an eternity. I stayed in my apartment, trying to focus on my work, but I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. It wasn't just the words that hurt, but the complete lack of understanding. They couldn't see what they had done. They couldn't see how much it hurt me to be treated like that. After all the love and effort I had put into trying to help them, in the back of my mind, I kept hoping they would come around. I thought maybe they would realize how much they had hurt me and try to make it right. But as the days passed, nothing happened. No calls, no messages, no apologies, just silence. The silence was deafening. And it was the hardest part. It was as if they didn't even care that I was gone. It felt like I was just another inconvenience that they had to deal with. And when I stopped playing their game, they were relieved. Then the messages came. It started with my mom. She sent a text, Wilson. They cut off the power. What's going on with the payments? I didn't reply. I couldn't. After everything that had happened, I wasn't about to let them manipulate me again. They could figure it out on their own. Then, my younger brother Juan texted, asking about the internet. Hey, there's no internet. What did you do? Again, I ignored it. But the real punch came when my dad called. The moment I saw his name on the screen, I hesitated. For a second, I considered ignoring it. But something in me told me I had to face it. I answered, and his voice was different from before. Not angry, but broken. Wilson, son, he began, his voice trembling. Please listen to me. We need your help. We're short on money for the bills. The power is about to be cut off again. I don't know how we'll pay for everything. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not accepting the check. I was an idiot. Forgive me. His words hit me like a ton of bricks, but the anger I'd been feeling didn't just disappear. It was still there, simmering beneath the surface. I had been waiting for him to apologize for so long, but this didn't feel like the apology I had imagined. It felt too late. For a moment, I stayed silent. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to run back to them and fix everything like I always had. But then, the memories of that night came rushing back, my dad throwing my check aside, his words about my gift being mediocre and a show-off, my mom's coldness, and Juan's indifference. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. They didn't want my help. They just wanted to use me when they needed something. No, I said, my voice steady but firm. Dad, do you know how I felt when you treated me like that? When you threw my gift away like it meant nothing? I tried to do everything for you. I wanted to help, but it was never enough. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being your ATM just because you don't like how I earn my money. He tried to interrupt, but I didn't let him. Please, Wilson, just this once. We're your family. We need you. Those words stung. Family. It was always the same excuse. They had always used that word to justify everything, the manipulation, the control, the constant guilt trips. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. No, I said again, stronger this time. You're not going to guilt trip me into helping you anymore. It's over. I hung up the phone, my heart racing. But for the first time, I felt peace. I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat. I had done enough. And now it was time to live for myself. That night, I didn't sleep much. My mind was running 1,000 miles a minute. I kept thinking about everything. The family I grew up with, the love I had tried to give, the brokenness of it all. But something inside me shifted. I knew I had made the right decision. I wasn't going to let them make me feel guilty for wanting to help and for wanting to be appreciated for it. Weeks passed, and I didn't hear from them. It was like they had vanished for a while. I wondered if they would ever try to reach out, but as time went on, I started to realize something. They weren't just upset because I stopped helping. They were upset because I had taken back control. A month later, I heard from my cousin. She told me everything. It was like the universe had thrown everything back at me. My dad had been fired from the factory after years of working there. The company was downsizing, and because of his age and exhaustion, they let him go. Now, he was working as a security guard, barely making enough to get by. He had nothing left, no salary, no savings, and no way to pay the bills. But that wasn't the worst part. My family had been evicted from the house. They couldn't keep up with the rent, and the landlord kicked them out. My cousin told me that it was a disaster. The neighbors had watched as my dad and mom's belongings were thrown onto the street. My mom had to sell the TV. I had bought for them to buy food, and they were living in a tiny room in a cheap neighborhood now, with barely any furniture. Juan had abandoned them. He had moved in with a friend, one of the kids he used to play video games with. He didn't even care. He told everyone it wasn't his problem, and he was tired of everything. It was hard to hear. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me wondered if I could have helped prevent this, if I had just kept paying their bills, if I had just been the same person I was before. But then I remembered the way they had treated me, how they had ridiculed my success, how they had torn me down for trying to help. They had made their choices. And now they were paying the consequences. I didn't know how to feel about all of this. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy for them, especially my mom, but most of me just felt numb. They had burned that bridge, and now I was free to live my life without the weight of their envy and resentment hanging over me. I focused on my work. I signed a big contract with a brand that paid me more than I had made last year. I kept saving, planning for a better future. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something for myself, not for anyone else.